Yes, people, welcome back to another episode of United State of Mind on Pros Only Sports. You're here with myself, Roland. Now, we're going to assess what has actually happened to Jadon Sancho. Now, before I break anything down, make sure you're hitting that like button, that subscribe button as well if you're new, hit that notification bell, hit the socials down below, and all that good stuff right there. But look, it's an important question. I mean, Jadon Sancho, there's been a lot of chatter around the United supporters in terms of, what has actually happened to him. Why has he been taken out of the team and all of that? And I just want to try and give my assessment on that. And obviously, I'll give you lot your opportunity to have your assessment in the comments below at the end of the video if you get to the end of the video. Now, I mean, obviously, he's been taken out of the team to be put on an individual training program on the recommendation of Ten Hag and his coaching staff. Um, and when you look at that, you're saying to yourself, "Ooh, that doesn't sound right. He's not really at the required level um, for um, for Ten Hag and the way he wants to play and the level he wants his players to be at." But then at the same time, I saw a lot of people, kind of speaking on it, like in terms of it being a bad type of thing. And I feel like we've seen this happen a number of occasions with different players in different clubs and whatnot. My experience of seeing it at Manchester United was seeing Wayne Rooney go on an individual training program in the US several seasons ago, maybe in 2010, 2011, I think it was. Maybe, was it 2010, 2011? Maybe, yeah, probably around that time. He wasn't required, he wasn't at the required level to play in a Manchester United team. And so Fergie, shipped him off to Oregon. He went there and did an individual training program, came back into the United team and he was fit and firing. Like, this is something that's not new. It's not a new phenomenon. Like, this happens with players all the time. It's just, now with social media, it gets amplified like crazy anyway. In the time that this all kind of happened, obviously we've seen Garnacho promoted, and obviously I feel like that's a good thing. It kind of just instills competition within your squad. So at any given moment, at any given time, somebody can replace you if you're not performing at your best, and that is what you kind of need in elite level sport, just in general. And so the fact that his replacement is right there and is on his toes will also stand in good stead for the squad competitively moving forward for the team. Um, Obviously, another thing that hasn't really been amplified from people, which I think is also important, obviously in this time and this day and age, is the mental health impact as well of this. We forget that Jadon Sancho is very young. I believe he's still 21. He might be 22. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm incorrect. But he's a young player, who has never been exposed to this level of scrutiny before in his life. When you go from a club like Dortmund where there's not enough eyes on you in that manner, you've got your fan base, and it's a worldwide fan base, but it's not as big as Manchester United's worldwide fan base. So everybody in every single country, there's a Manchester United fan who'll be watching your every move. And I feel like that may have played a part in his mental health. You got your own fans and you've got rival fans criticizing you pretty much on a daily basis because now everyone's got their phones on them. So you could say whatever you want on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, on YouTube, and criticize a player because they're not doing things that the way you like, right? And so that's obviously gonna take a toll on the player. So that's obviously a factor to kind of what's happened to him and how it's kind of affected him in terms of him and his football. um but we gotta kind of look at some of the kind of key elements to maybe why he's not been at the required level for Ten Hag and has had to go on this individual training program. Because I'm looking at his like pathway into men's football, for example. Now, I believe Jadon Sancho, when he left Manchester City at 17 years old, hadn't actually played a first team game in men's football. And so when you consider that, right, you're saying to yourself, okay, he's actually not played a high level of men's football, not played at elite level yet. So, obviously he was an emerging talent, and there was a lot of suitors for him at the time when he indicated he wanted to leave Manchester City, but he's never played men's football before. And he has to go to a Dortmund side where obviously, Dortmund, they're good with young players. They're not going to expose you to men's football until they believe you're ready. And so he had to play, I believe, a handful of games in their second team in the Bundesliga as well, um, where you're playing as part of Dortmund's second team, but you're playing men's football. I don't think it's the second division. Maybe they were in the third division actually. I don't know how you pronounce it in German, but anyway, um, but yeah, so he probably played in the third division where you're playing competitive football against men, as a 17-year-old. And he played a handful of games there. So you get an experience, a first taste of men's football. And then, you're continuing your development, you're training, first team training with, top professionals, seasoned professionals, even at that. And some young players, some talented young players where, you're having to force your way into the squad. And obviously at that point, you're getting onto the bench and then you're coming on in games and then you establish yourself as a first team player. Now compare that with somebody like Jude Bellingham, for example, kind of similar pathway, like not in terms of his pathway into men's football, but just in terms of him going at a young age from England to Germany. Jude Bellingham already was exposed to men's football at 16 years old for Birmingham City, albeit a level below, but it's still a competitive league in the Championship. And so he already had that first taste. So he didn't have such a hard adaptation into men's football or into competitive football just generally. Now, I'm looking at that as one place in terms of his development where it was kind of missing kind of early. And so it took him a while before he actually got an opportunity to really showcase himself in men's competitive elite level football. But then obviously I need to also state this. He played elite level football, but that's at Dortmund's level. When you move to Manchester United, it's a completely different level of elite level football. Because of course, Dortmund, he's playing in the Champions League, he's playing in the competitive league in the Bundesliga, albeit it's a league where Dortmund are not expected to win the league. It's Bayern Munich. It's only off of a rare chance that you catch a Bayern Munich slipping is when you'll be challenging for the league and potentially could win it. So you move to Manchester United now. Even if we're not the best team, they're still talking about us in title pictures. Like they still expect us to win something. Whereas at Dortmund, yeah, he won a German Cup, but it happens. You know what I'm saying? Whereas at United, any other competition apart from the league, let's say for the last 5-6 years, we've been expected to win a cup competition, the Europa League, the FA Cup, the League Cup. We've been expected to win it, and I don't think he was exposed to even that. So then obviously, that can lead to a little bit of complacency. You come to Manchester United side, you've got a huge price tag on your head, and that can also be a factor. You're thrown into a team that's been, completely disjointed, a manager who's basically on the end of his rope in Oli, who's brought you in, maybe I think the club have probably misread your profile, essentially, expecting you to be a speed demon when you're a bit more of a close control, dribbling kind of winger, somebody that will come inside, can go outside himself. And so when you haven't got the right footballing plan for a player, it can all fall apart. Look at Paul Pogba, for example. We didn't have the right footballing plan for him at all. And so, you're moving him all over the place on the pitch, and it's just really just killed himself at the club. And the same thing was kind of happening with Sancho, left, right. You don't know where he could play. He could play as a 10. Never got an opportunity there, but he could play there. And it's like you need to pinpoint a position for him where his strengths lie and let him play. But then, yeah, I think also the lack of adaptation, understanding that, as a player, sometimes it's not just about the manager throwing you in the right position. Sometimes you have to adapt to the position that you're in and give your best for the team. And I think also at times he's not done that himself, and he's not really done himself any favors in that regard. I mean, looking at all of those factors in play, you're saying to yourself, okay, he hasn't had the pathway into men's football like, let's say, a Jude Bellingham has, but has had to build himself up to get to that point. He's played elite level football. He's played in the Champions League with Dortmund, but the expectation levels are not as the same level as Manchester United. I think when you make that move, your mindset has to change. You have to understand that now I'm basically a global star. I haven't done anything in my career, but I'm only there because I'm attached to this club. I'm at that level now. And so everyone's going to look at me at that level. So I have to produce at that level. Now, this is the problem. When you get to that level, if you haven't adapted, and adaptation is not just about the mindset, but it's also about physical side. And that's where I feel like Ten Hag has looked at him, and the coaches have looked at him and said, you're not at the required physical level to carry out what we need. And so they've done the smart thing, because obviously the club, the coaching staff, the manager have a duty of care to these players to make sure mentally they're right and physically they're right so they can do their jobs in the best way possible. So they've said, okay, we're taking you out the firing line. Good thing for us. We've got, as I mentioned before, a young player chomping at the bit, willing to take his spot. And so, he's come out the firing line. He has to do what he needs to do to get himself back in. I'm glad he's back in training right now. And I'm hoping that it's a lesson for him, because you can't be complacent. This is elite level football, real elite level football. This is not Dortmund level. This is Manchester United level. So because of that, you always have to be on top of your toes, or you're going to lose your place in the team, and it's up to you. I'm eager to see what he's going to look like moving forward, because the player that the potential that we've seen, and the kind of player he could be is something scary. With the ability he has with his feet in terms of dribbling, he could be at a really high level. I don't want to make any real comparisons before people try and throw me under the bus, but he could be at that level. It's really all up to him. And to be honest with you, I think he can do it. I feel like, coming where he's coming from, in terms of, let's even talk about, as a young player, making that decision at 17 to move to a completely foreign country at a time where it's not really the norm for players to do that. Forgo, having the same kind of development path as somebody like Phil Foden in that Pep Guardiola team, and deciding to go it himself, albeit through some, some advisement, some advice from some of his team, for example, in behind the scenes. But ultimately, he's done what he needs to do in terms of his career, and now he's ended up at Manchester United, and for him to be able to perform for the club, he needs to do more on his side, because I think the club are handling it the right way. So, boy, look, we have to just kind of wait and see what happens with him in the future. Hopefully, he comes good and can live up to that price tag. Of course, it's going to be weighing him down, just like it has weighed down a lot of players that we've seen over the last 10 years, for example. It happened to Paul Pogba. It happened to Harry Maguire. It's happening to Anthony right now, and we'll discuss that in a later video too. And it's happening to him as well. Hopefully, he can overcome that, and the manager can put him in the best place possible to perform at his highest level. But look, that's my kind of assessment of what's happened to Jadon Sancho so far in his Manchester United career. And I'm hoping that, he does well, and we can kind of forget this small kind of negative period in his career. But guys, you're at the end of the video. Please let me know in the comments what you think has happened to Jadon Sancho so far in his Manchester United career, and what needs to be done for him to continue, or to try and improve and stay at a required level, so that he can be a strong part of this Manchester United team for the coming future. But before we get out of here, people, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you're new, hit that notification bell and all of that good stuff right there. Follow the socials down below, and we are out, people. Peace.